Hi there, first session of July, and this is going to be a turbulent month. So let's quickly take a look at SUI coin, the Wyckoff method, stages, as well as resistance and support levels. One interesting thing I've added because of a comment I received is the Wyckoff method or Wyckoff stages in the daily chart. So one level lower than what we usually do. So let's get started. So here we are looking at the weekly chart as usual. Currently it's down around 3% in weekly terms. So here basically, well, is it weekly? That 3% is probably 24 hours. So anyway, here we are at the post LPSY stage. We all know if you have been following. Currently there was a little bounce last week, and then now we are almost halfway through the bounce. So 2 weeks ago it dropped to around $2.40, touching the or poking through the yellow. Let me enlarge this. Poking through the yellow support line at around $2.35, and then immediately bounced last week with increased volume. However, right now it's been falling half of what last week has gained. So from the macro perspective, from a weekly perspective, the big picture, it's still kind of trending down. Well, you can visualize it by drawing a box, so we can take reference and take a look over here, right? It's basically continuing this downward trend, only getting a little bit of rebound from the yellow support line. And when it gets closer to the end of this month, when we get to this point, late July, maybe third week or so, either one of two things has to happen. It depends on what kind of news come out in the coming 2-3 weeks. Once again the price bounces from the yellow and breaks outside of this declining trend. 2, the yellow support line no longer works, and the price comes down to between the yellow and the white, pretty much like what happened during March-April time. So these two, given this triangle here, would likely happen, like I said, by the end of this month or even earlier if any kind of uncertainty arise. So let's keep this box here on this interval, and when we look at this week by week, we'll see what's going to happen, whether it's still staying within the trend. And in terms of daily, we've drawn this box a week or 2 weeks back. The price is still being traded within this trend, so I've nothing to add for now. And then here we talked about, like in the weekly chart, it's less sensitive in the big picture level, but when we get to this daily timeline, it's more sensitive, and we see there is actually a triangle here near middle of the month, so less than 2 weeks from now. There's probably going to we're going to see a breakout either outside of the downward trend, or it breaks the support and try to test the yellow and white I've mentioned already. So here we see these volumes. It's getting lower a little, but then it's rising just yesterday. So we'll see how today and the next few days perform, because remember here, just roughly 2 weeks ago, mid-June, there were 6 consecutive red candles, and we're starting to see 2 now. So whether the similar pattern will happen until it reaches this support before it bounces a little and then retests, whichever way depending on the demand in the market. So here's the thing, right? The interesting element that I mentioned at the beginning, let's try to plug in Wyckoff tags. So if you have been with me for a while, you know I prefer to do the Wyckoff on the weekly timeline because there's less noise, the patterns are clearer. However, we can still try. You can see it's a bit noisy and probably you see more than one potential Wyckoff stage, but it's fun, right? So let's try to do it. So here, I'll borrow what I've created in other charts. Just borrow one would be enough. Let's say borrow this. I like to use buying climax. So let's say this was the buying climax. Actually no, this one was the buying climax. And then this one was the automatic reaction. And let's say, I don't want both, I just want one. Let's say this was the up thrust. Remember, these are on the daily timeline. So the pattern that we observe is still under the hood of the weekly. So if the weekly is falling, even though there's distribution going on in daily, the big picture is still going down. So I need to clarify that. Don't get carried away by whatever we see. So even though we say that's buying climax, that's up thrust, it's still lower than the actual weekly time frame kind of peaks. So we have to always keep in mind and don't get lost by like having fun with this. So quickly, obviously we have, let's say, sign of weakness, and then LPSY, same thing. So let's just test it out and see whether this holds. If what we're seeing now, or what we're going through now, was the selling climax, it was somewhere around there as well. But it's a bit tricky. So the last one, I'll come back to that for a second. Let's say if the current one is the automatic rally. So that should be the first one, yeah. This second peak over here, we see two peaks, yeah. If I change the line chart, it's clearer, two peaks. The second could possibly be sign of strength. So let's assume that it is for now. So by the time it comes to the breakout, if it's like another leg up for a few days and leading to another buying climax happens, then we know for sure, okay, yeah, that's really was the sign of strength. However, be careful. If it really is accumulate enough and then there's another buying climax, this new buying climax may not be as high as the last one. So this one is obviously lower than whatever we see here, right? So that's the thing we have to be careful. But if you have been very disciplined about adjusting your stop loss, I'm not worried about you. So if you're not, better practice your discipline and become less emotional about whether an asset will go up or go down. So here we have all these tags, and I just want to make sure it doesn't populate to the weekly, so it won't distort our discussion. So that was the thing that we added, right? If we have to add the rest, let's say if this was the selling climax and then automatic rally, and I can just drag it from here, a second test, and immediately we can see a sign of strength that follows. Maybe that one was a spring. And then we know what's next. The distribution pattern happens again, and then the distribution is over. So what we are trying to visualize is whether a new accumulation pattern similar to this is going to happen, because if it does, that means there will be a rebound. We don't know how high that could be, but this is the interesting part about adding Wyckoff to the daily, in addition to the weekly big picture that we always talk about, right? So it's the Wyckoff under Wyckoff, or Wyckoff within Wyckoff. So thank you for that particular comment. That's how or why I add this, so we can have more discussion points.